Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 418. It is the last day of the week, aka the Big Bang Attack workout. I feel very good right now, very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, which you've already seen on the thumbnail and or title, Platitudes. So, the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because this was on the list for a while, and somebody had said it in a YouTube video, and I was like, I should talk about that, the idea of saying blanket statements in order to represent something that you aren't really being genuine about. While I looked it up, I was like, this is interesting. A lot of these things, although meaningless in a certain regard, can be very accurate. And it's really weird because I think that in the world that we live in today, particularly, what makes you think you're worth not getting a platitude? You know what I mean? Like, how do you think that you are a person of care, right? And that's kind of where I want to go with this today and just kind of explore that idea. Because realistically, honesty isn't between the other people, it's between you and yourself. See this video right here. And that is why I'm very interested in something like this, because I think that a lot of the times you want to be genuine with someone, right? That's the main idea. But a lot of the times people don't want genuine people a lot of the time, particularly if they don't really know them, a coworker, for example, or an acquaintance, something like that. People are usually strangers to each other. The person is more of an intimate thing, but people aren't really something that you could give a genuine thought to, particularly because I don't think they even want the genuine thought. If I were to sit here and just tell you something like, the grass is greener on the other side, which is true in a certain sense, but it's just a saying, right? And it's not true at all, depending on your situation. And it's always like, where do you want to go with it? I think that I'd rather get the platitude bullshit than probably the reality check that probably more people are actually in honest need for. And this, like I said, this is kind of like a part 2 on the honesty is reserved for the self, not for others, because this is kind of a weird cross section with that, where why do you think you're good enough for something more than just a platitude? You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about you for real. I care about my friends. I'll actually say something to them, but I know that the level of honesty that I could have with them is completely different than something that I could have with a random person. Not only that, but also, what if you just embody those types of things, so it's just a very interesting idea. You can probably say that half the shit that I talk about here are platitudes, but in reality, I want to actually dive in deep into the thoughts and ideas of the actual meaning behind these things. And that's the entire point. So I want to talk about that, give examples of some of these, and try to go deeper into them, because I don't think they're the worst thing in the world. They are useless and empty, of course, but also, like I said, what makes you think that you're worth more? And then that's also an interesting question, because what do I think? Why do I think I am worth more than that? So it's something to think about, and it's overall an interesting subject. So with that being said, I will see you at Mother Base.
All right, so started this day off with single arm lat pull down, which was pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today, platitudes. So before we continue on, let me start with this. Platitude, noun, a remark or statement, especially one with a moral content that has been used too often to be interesting or thoughtful. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because I think that we have gotten to the point at where we can circle back and kind of go into certain platitudes and make them cool again, because everything has become too far downstream and made it so people are just too wanting a specific and very virtualized, hyper-specific attitude or advice for themselves. When in reality, if we look at the genesis of what people are like, if we look at personalities and everything else, there's probably about 8 to 12 personalities in the world, and most people fit in one of those 8 to 12 boxes, but they don't don't want to realize that. And obviously there are small details that pertain that might be a little different, of course, per person, but relatively speaking, everybody fits in those boxes. It's why something like astrology has been such a popular thing for such a long time, because realistically, some people figured out a long time ago that these things are really just in a box, and there you go. There's nothing really special about these people. That's why they can do stuff still and say certain things that will resonate with certain people, because it's not that hard to predict depending on who you are and what's going on. It's just the idea that we are quote unquote special and we're all individualized and we all deserve a participation trophy that makes it so that things like platitudes are meaningless to certain people. But in reality, they should be meaningful to them, because they don't necessarily need everything that goes along with something, a detailed message or whatever else that people like. Because for some reason, the message has been lost so much that you could go back and just look at the giant platitude for something and realize, oh, hey, maybe there is something to it. I will use a example of it later when I talk about plenty of fish in the sea. But one that I joked about the other, like a few years back, that I remember with a couple of friends of mine, was live, laugh, love. I would love to have a poster of that. Why? Because it's such a fucking ridiculous thing now. It's such a ridiculous thing to say or even to think about. But in reality, we should live, laugh, and love. Why is that such a hard thing to think about? Why is that so asinine to say? Because in reality, it is something that more people should probably do. It's very stupid to diminish something just because it is ubiquitous. It's like those people who say, oh, I don't drink water because water just doesn't taste like anything. I need to have a flavor with it. How retarded do you have to not know that everything that you're drinking is water? And if you tell me, oh, I'm allergic to water, fuck you. There's like a less than 1% chance that that's actually true. I think that there are other things like that where you are making yourself so much more of a main character in other people's lives than you actually truly deserve. And I think that that's the biggest issue I have with it. Some people, you should just hear something like, hang in there, everything will be okay, just be yourself. You know why? Because most of the time you don't deserve anything else. I think a lot of people think that they do deserve more than that. They want something more than that. They want something more detailed. They want answers to actual questions, when in reality they should be asking themselves, why are these things happening to them? They want honesty from other people that can't give it to them. They don't want to be honest with themselves, so they have to give them these platitudes, which suck in theory, because then they don't get specific, hyper specific details. But sometimes, don't worry, things will get better is actually legitimately what happens. Don't worry, things will get better. And it's as simple as that. But for some reason, they want it in particular with them. And I think that there's an ego-ness to it that bothers me so much when people just diminish these things, because you don't need anything else. A lot of the stuff when it comes to psychology and or other types of mental gymnastics that people go through is very much comes down to either the honesty within themselves about their own situation and what how other people perceive them and how they perceive others perceiving them, right? Those are the two things that happen in the world. And basically, when people are talking to you, when it comes down to these like platitudes or whatever, it's because they don't know exactly every single minute detail about your life. They don't care. 90% of the people don't give a fuck. It's a very small, minute amount of people that actually care. And those who actually care will give you the detailed actual messaging that you want. You don't want to hear this shit from like your boss, who will give you an actual honest advice that will be like, hey, you're kind of retarded when you do this thing. You should probably stop. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear everything happens for a reason from that guy, because you can dismiss him because he's your boss. You know, certain people in your life should have the ability to say these things and you can move on from them because they don't necessarily care to know more. And I don't think you should care to know more from them. It's like it serves its purpose for what it is essentially for. Something that you need to hear so that way people can get off your back and move on, you know, if you are the person. Because who gives a fuck if you're actually going to try to give them advice? And 90% of the time, they're not even going to listen to it. it. So it might as well give them something shallow and meaningless that could honestly cut deep depending on the person, because you don't know what happened to them. You don't know them, but also you don't care to know about them. That's the other big thing, is a lot of the time people want this, but reality doesn't want that at all. Maybe this would make you seem like, hey, if the person that you know is giving these types of platitudes towards you in any situation, maybe you should rethink your relationship with them. Maybe you should try to understand, oh, maybe we're not actually friends, because there's a certain level of honesty that only happens with friends and family and loved ones that is different from, so let's say, an acquaintance or a coworker or a boss or something like that. And if they give you those types of things where they say like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger or some bullshit like that, not Kelly Clarkson style, but if they say something like that to you, maybe you should think, oh, this relationship actually isn't good for me. Maybe they are not an actual friend of mine. Maybe I should go to someone else to actually try to get real advice rather than try to ask whoever the fuck will listen to me. Maybe that will actually help. Maybe platitudes can work, because then they can honestly show you who actually knows you, or at least is actually trying to help you in a hyper specific way. But sometimes you don't even need that. Sometimes a friend can come up to me and say, it is what it is. And I will fucking be so glad to hear that, because it's true. Sometimes it is what it is. And that's all I need to hear. And a lot of people, that's all you need to hear. But for some reason, no, it's not hyper specific enough. I need to know exact answers for every single thing humanly possible. And you know what? You're never going to get that. Good luck trying to find that in any type of scenario or situation. And if you do, congratulations. You've just wasted a lot of your time, which you could have done something else. You have been stuck in a certain piece of your life. Congratulations. Good job. Hopefully you've moved on. But if you tried to find every single answer for everything, no matter what, you haven't. So good luck.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercise is not filmed. Non-exercise is skipped. Also done. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Platitudes. So the main reason I wanted to discuss this is because, one, this has been on the list for a while, but two, I heard a video when they talked about it and how nobody can ever really give anything more than a platitude when talking about certain topics and here and there. And it made me realize that he is technically right. A lot of people like to do that on the internet, particularly because they can't really go in depth, because it's also the fucking internet. The issue with it entirely is the fact that if you want to get into in depth with something, you can't do it over fucking pixels. Unfortunately, no matter how hard you would try on here, more likely than not, people are just going to turn off the TV or turn off their computer, turn off the video, turn away from whatever you are trying to say, because if you were trying to go any deeper than the surface level, shallow take that most people will have, nobody cares at that point, because they think they want a genuine connection with somebody, but in reality they don't. They want to feel like they have a genuine connection with someone. That's why platitudes are so prevalent in today's society, because you want to feel like you have some type of actual genuine connection with someone without actually doing anything about it. And that's why people hate them, but will still use them all the time. And in essence, they aren't even necessarily bad, but because they have been overused and we have become a weird, non-deep society, we have to keep it surface level. I could write an entire essay, maybe make an entire 6-hour video about the idea of platitudes and going into each one and talking and discussing why it's good and all this other stuff and why it's bad, all these other things. But no one would give a shit because it's 6 fucking hours. No one cares. If somebody sees a paragraph under some type of Instagram post, I'm not reading it. I don't care, I don't care enough to do any of that. And that's why people will just say, and one sentence. 90% of the time, if I ever make a comment on something, I pray to God I can do it within 2 sentences, because I know that's the maximum attention that I'll get from anybody anywhere. So that's why platitudes, even though they are in essence stupid, retarded, and shallow, are necessary, because we don't have much time and or attention span to give to other things to make sure that people can get the fucking message. I mean, shit. there's plenty of fish in the sea, for example, is a big, platitude. There are others that you can date, obviously. But the thing is, nobody's going to sit there and be like, bitch, you're a issue and you have to fix yourself. Or, bitch, your standards are too fucking high, because nobody wants to hear that. They have to say something that is very surface level and they can kind of just pass it by, because nobody actually wants to solve or try to fix anything, look deeper underneath the surface as to what the issue is. And I think that that's the biggest thing. Why do you think you are worth an explanation on stuff when a platitude can do just well? Who are you? Who are you in the world where I could say, look at you and say, hey, look, this is what's wrong. This is actually what you should probably do, but don't listen to me. You know what? And I don't know who I am to do that, but at the same time, if somebody talked to me and said that shit to me, I'd be like, all right, cool, because I know what's the internet now. And most interactions are now based off of what the internet's like. You have 2 seconds to get their attention or you're fucked. That's it. And I think that that's the thing that I guess would be frustrating about this if it wasn't so prevalent, I guess. Because realistically, a lot of the stuff that they say in these stupid fucking platitudes, at the end of the day, though shallow and retarded, kind of true. And that's the other part about it that I don't understand. It's like, all right, I get it. Like, you want to have more of an in-depth conversation on these things. But if you do, no one's going to pay attention. Nobody's going to care. And the person that actually does care, sits there and reads about it, is probably just going to be pissed off and disagree with you. You know what I mean? There's absolutely zero point in actually trying to do something like that. So at the end of the day, when going into these types of things, just try to explain it in some way, whimsical way. So then that way the message of what you want to say is deeper or embedded better than just doing one of the stupid platitudes, but also embody something that means something, I guess, is the best way to what I'm trying to say here. The embodiment of meaning is 90% of why people don't like platitudes, because there's nothing behind it, If I say fucking there's plenty of fish out in the sea, yeah, there's nothing behind that. But if I say, hey, you're going to find someone if you believe in yourself and do some other shit in your life and maybe fix a few things, stop being a stupid idiot, then there you go, obviously. Sure, that's a little bit insulting, but you got to get it. You know what I mean? That's more genuine than just sitting there and saying there's plenty of fish in the sea. So I think it's just a combination of a lot of things that have come together to make it so that platitudes have become a ubiquitous thing all across the board, no matter what happens. And it sucks because we have diluted these types of things by overusing them to the point where now they've become useless, and now they are spread about by people who don't actually give a fuck, and also have zero attention span on the other side. So it doesn't even matter if the people that should probably hear these things aren't listening to them, because their attention span has been fucking devoid by all the shorts and shit that they watch. That's no point in actually trying to do anything about it. So it's just an interesting dichotomy that happens, specifically when it comes to it. I think that a lot of people would benefit from actually understanding these things rather than just complaining about it and move on, Not even accepting what is trying to be said. What is trying to be said is probably the most nicest way of telling you that you fucking suck most of the time, And I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of these platitudes I keep reading are just like comforts to make people feel better and all this other stuff. And, I see like it's not good because it diminishes the person's like feelings and doesn't let them express their feelings. I'm going to make an entire video about that someday, but your feelings are valid, sure. But shut the fuck up. No one cares after 30 seconds. Now, obviously, if it's like a lost family member, something like a death in the family, yes, of course, go ahead, go do that. But why are you doing that next to me? Go do it by yourself. And I know that sounds harsh and terrible, but express it out with yourself. You don't need me there. I'm there as just a witness for what? And I think that that's the thing at the end of the day, is that like a lot of these things where people want to express themselves outside, motherfucker, express yourself to you. be honest with you. I don't care. And most of the time, neither do you. It's like, it's a two-sided street. And that's what makes it so frustrating, because it's like, you want to express these things, right? Unless you're like my brother or my friend, I don't care. And nobody else should, in theory. It's a very interesting dynamic. And I will get into one day about your feelings are valid, because I will talk about that and how realistically, yes, they are, but also grow up. So there is that as well. But with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. I would really love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.